request for removal of the Housing Authority member.
Mr. Chairman and members of the audience, the chair has asked me to make an introductory statement regarding the proceeding that's going to take place this evening. Some of this information in detail has been stated on the record previously as the board voted to both hold a hearing and then establish certain procedures. So this is a hearing to consider two letters of complaint to the select board regarding the conduct of a member of the Great Barrington Housing Authority, Karen Smith. There's a letter that's dated November 5, 2018 from the Vice Chair of the Tenants Association, Marlene Koloski, and a letter from a former administrative assistant of the Housing Authority, Michelle Luber. That's dated November 13, 2018. Ms. Koloski's letter states that tenants are requesting the removal of Ms. Smith as chairperson of the Housing Authority, and Ms. Luber's letter requests that the Select Board take whatever action is within the Select Board's authority. The hearing is being held under the provisions of Section 6 of Chapter 121B of the General Laws. And that statute says that the Select Board may receive written charges against a member of a housing authority, either appointed or elected by the town, and may, after a hearing, remove such member for the reason of inefficiency, neglect of duty, or misconduct in office. The member must receive 14 days notice of the hearing to be held, together with a copy of the charges that are being made against him or her. The member has the right to be represented by counsel at the proceeding and to be heard in his or her defense. On November 26, 2018, the Select Board voted to hold this hearing, a hearing on the charges that were made in the letters of complaint to the board. A letter of notice was sent to Ms. Smith on November 27th. That letter included a statement that the board would outline the procedures for the hearing at its meeting of December 3, and stated that if there were any questions regarding the hearing process, that they be submitted in writing to the town manager's office by noontime on that day, December 3. There were no written questions submitted. At the meeting of December 3rd, the board voted on hearing procedure. So this evening, the chair will act as presiding officer in the same manner as for other hearings that the Select Board holds. Up to 4 witnesses will be heard on behalf of the Tenants Association and its complaint, and up to 3 witnesses, including Ms. Luber, will be heard in connection with her complaint. Members of the board will be able to ask questions of the persons making their presentations to the board. The order of procedure will be witness presentation and then questions by the board as directed by the chair. After all the presentations are made on behalf of the complainants, the board will hear the response of Ms. Smith, with up to 7 witnesses, including Ms. Smith. The board will follow the same order of witness presentations and then questions by members of the board. Individual presentations should not exceed 15 minutes, but the chair as presiding officer will decide any questions regarding more or less time as an issue may arise. The hearing will not follow formal rules of evidence, but the chair does reserve the right to allow or disallow evidence in the interest of fairness to all. The chair is also reserving the right to allow rebuttal or reply testimony after the presentations have been completed, and that will depend on the particular circumstances. Before the hearing begins, and for the benefit of the board and for all of you, what I'd like to do is outline the overall scope of the Select Board's review for this kind of a matter. The focus of the hearing is the particular charges that are made in the letters of complaints. The board may not consider new or different charges as part of this hearing. The statute that the hearing is being held under describes what may serve as the basis for an act authorizes removal of a housing authority member for, quote, inefficiency, neglect of duty, or misconduct in office. Massachusetts courts have stated that misconduct in office does not require a showing of intentional wrongdoing. Rather, the standard of proof that has been set is that the member has become unfit for office by reason of intentional violation of a known and significant rule or duty inherent in the obligations of the office. That phrase, rule or duty, would include, in addition to a particular rule or a particular duty, a statute, a bylaw, or a regulation. The misconduct in office must be significant rather than unsubstantial or trivial, and the rules or duties in question must be of importance in the administration of the public office. The Supreme Judicial Court has specifically said that, quote, errors of judgment cannot be construed as misconduct in office, close quote. The statute does not speak to any sanction or discipline which is less than removal from office. In my view, the statute does not authorize any formal sanction or discipline otherwise. If, however, after consideration of the evidence presented, the Select Board does not find a basis for removal, it is my opinion that the Board would still be free to make comment or request to express its view on what has been presented this evening, the same as it may do on any other matter of public interest. One other point to be noted: at previous meeting of the Board, it was noted by the Chair that whereas this is a small town and many persons wear many hats, it's not unusual that members of the Board would know a person who is in the position of housing authority member. Members had provided, and the Chair had stated to me, circumstances under which they may have had dealings or associations with Ms. Smith, and I had given my report to the Chair, and I believe it was announced at the meeting that I did not find that any member of this Board had a statutory conflict that would require recusal based on any interactions or dealings that had been had with Ms. Smith. I will say for the record, though, that if any member feels that he or she is not capable of being fair and impartial in the conduct of this hearing, it is appropriate for that person to say so and then to recuse himself or herself. That ends my introductory statement, Mr. Chair.
We will start off by hearing testimony from Ms. Kolowski. Just come to the microphone. Thank you.
First, if you don't mind, I'd like to give you this.
Yeah.
There's 80% of the tenants. Like their, this is tenant association. Each one.
Mr. Chair, have you heard on the submission of additional materials?
Would you like one?
Yes, please.
Let me just do this. There you go.
By reference, my name is Rich Mahoney. For reference, my name is Rich Mahoney. I'm an attorney and I represent Karen Smith in these proceedings. I know I had addressed or sent a written filing earlier to you folks, and I'll just present that to the board, which addresses my legal concerns with new evidence being addressed here tonight. I was silent at the opening because I thought my brother's description of the scope of the evidence is correct. The statute is clear. Charges had to be made in writing 14 days in advance to give my client, to ensure my client's due process rights to be able to prepare, which are clearly articulated in the statute. If there are any written submissions, they had to be given 14 days in advance to my client. Therefore, whatever it is, and I haven't had an opportunity to read it, I don't know whether it's prejudicial or not, I don't know what it contains, but whatever it is, it should be returned and it should not be accepted by the board as part of this hearing.
Chairman has,
Mr. Chair, if I may, just so it's clear to all, I have read this document. It is an additional written submission, as are the pages that have the signatures of persons with a 4-line introduction. It would be my view these documents would be outside the charges that have been presented to the board and for which the notice was given. It may be that some of the material that is in these documents is also referenced in the letter that was submitted, and to that extent, it's certainly something that the board can consider, but as a separate document, in my view, it should not become part of the hearing record.
anyways. Karen has mistreated tenants. She slammed doors in their face, the elderly. A lady had an appointment for recertification. She went over to the office. Karen said, they're busy, slammed the door in her face, told her come back another day. You can't treat people like this at the housing. It's not fair, especially to the elderly. Because the lady she slammed the door in has come out of her apartment twice since that happened. It was in the papers last Sunday that I filed this complaint out of retaliation. Far from it. I started in September, and I tried to explain that the laws, and the board was supposed to call Jack Cooper in Boston. Mr. Bannon volunteered to make that call. It never happened. 3 weeks later, of course, I find out, and I call. I get the law, and I brought it to the town hall. Otherwise, I think this would have been already had a hearing on it. You know, and I think her behavior for that type of place is horrible. And right now, there's some legal issues going on. She identified herself as executive director to the payroll company to withdraw funds out of Vera's account. And that's in their legal department. That's overstepping her bounds. Micromanagement there is overstepping her bounds. I have it. It's easily to be printed out. You can't treat people the way she treats them. You know, this is their home. And she comes to a meeting, hey kiddos, we're not kiddos. You know, there's elderly tenants, there's handicapped, there's family, but we're not kiddos. We should be respected a little bit. And then when tenants try to talk to her, she said she's only there to run the place, not to listen to nobody. Well, it's their home. Wouldn't the tenants know more? As far as that goes. You know, so I feel she's got misconduct. And my witnesses explained that to you. I have no problem with that. But, like I said, this is not retaliation. This started in September. So, the paper got it wrong. And my first witness is going to be Jane Green.
I have a strike entirely in Kolowski's statements. Her written complaint, her written charge contains 3 itemized charges, numbers 1, 2, and 3, an event of June 2018, an event of July 2018, and a claim of nepotism. None of those were referenced in her complaint. The written charges, you see no reference to slamming of doors, no reference to the term kiddos. Once again, all of her testimony in whole was outside the scope of this hearing. We request that it be stricken and not considered by the board.
Only that the complaint alleged bullying and intimidation, so it wasn't giving examples of that within the scope of.
My witnesses are going to be testifying to that stuff in the meeting room.
Mr. Chairman, in response to the question, the complaint in this instance states as its subject, ongoing, disturbing, unwarranted, disrupted, and disrespectful behavior exhibited by Ms. Karen. In my view, the board has a measure of latitude to consider comments that fall within that general scope, as well as the numbered items that appear on the second page of the letter. There is both general and specific in this letter. I think it's fair to say that the import of the letter relates to the behavior of Ms. Smith.
Please call. Jane, go ahead.
question before I begin?
Yes,
When we were told that we were going to testify, we said we had to keep it just for the charge of bullying and just not mention anything else. Well, I'm not aware of anything else. I'm just wondering, the people that have been bullied here are here. I don't understand. I understand Karen can have a lot of character references because she deserves them and she's done a lot of good things. I do admit to that. But they haven't got a clue about what we do or how our lives are and how they've been affected. She can be the greatest person in the world if she hasn't bullied them. If I hadn't been witness to a couple of things, I would have been sitting over there with her. I don't understand how this works, but here we go. Karen was a longtime friend. When her name was mentioned for chairperson of the Great Barrington Board, I supported it 100%. I knew that the office was in chaos. Audits hadn't been taken in years, and it was a few months before anyone could even think of bringing in a director. Finally, Vera was hired, and she was the best thing that happened to us in years. She was given A+ marks the first month she was there by the chairperson and of the board. Little by little, people would come in and say to me, she was really being rough on Vera. My reply, you just have got to get used to Karen. She's tough, but she gets things done. She knows how to go about doing things. A few months ago, I was proved wrong. We had a Great Barrington Housing Authority meeting. When it ended, I went into the ladies' room down the hall. A few people were still in the meeting room. I was in the ladies' room. I heard Karen screaming at the top of her lungs at Vera in front of a few of the tenants. There was the banging on the table and a door slammed. I couldn't believe it. About 2 weeks later, I didn't say anything. About 2 weeks later, a very elderly lady who has used a walker and has a tough time leaving her apartment really struggles. I was bringing her some candy, and I couldn't find her in her apartment, so I went to the mailroom, and I found her crying. I asked her what was wrong, and she said that she had a problem, managed to get to the office. Karen said that she was busy, they had a meeting, and she'd have to come back later and close the door while she was standing right there. This is not the United Nations meeting. You should know enough to listen. People have to have time. The last meeting I attended, I planned on speaking when Citizens Speak came. I had some information I wanted the Great Barrington Housing Authority attorney to read before I spoke. I walked up to the table, handed him the papers. Karen immediately said, "What are those?" She put her hand out, and without even looking at what I'd given him, the attorney handed them over to her. I did not give those papers to Karen. I gave them to the Great Barrington Housing Authority lawyer. Shame on her for taking them. Shame on him for letting her. In closing, this is a personal message from me. Karen, you've managed to ruin the best thing that ever happened to our tenants with your constant bullying as our director. I personally, after working 60 years as an advocate for the elderly and disabled, do not want you in charge of any decisions that will impact the last years, months, or days of my life. You do not have the patience or the temperament or the knowledge on how to handle elderly and handicapped people. Thank you.
I am housing board member, and I'm also a tenant in senior housing. I had a phone call. If I had known this was gonna happen, I would have kept dates and times, etc., but I didn't know this was gonna happen. I got a phone call from Karen at 9:30 one evening. I don't know if it was April or May. She was in a rage, telling me that she was livid at Vera, and if she could fire her on the spot, she would have done that. And my reply to her was, you better not. It was the best thing that ever happened up there. And I do believe from that moment on, I was thrown off the housing board as far as she was concerned. I didn't agree with her. And months went on, and 3 or 4 times I went to the office to see Vera, and either found her in tears or visibly upset because Karen had been in there yelling at her, or she was going to be coming in, and she was nervous about that. The admin's job is quite entailed for housing. And up to date, we've had 1 admin out of 4 that was extremely highly qualified, and that was Michelle. But for her own reasons, I don't know why, she left us in March. So all the admin's jobs, on top of executive director jobs, were piled onto Vera. And the executive director's job alone is enough. And Marlene is going to touch base on nepotism, and I'm going to let her do that. But unqualified admin was brought in to take the place of Michelle, and legally not qualified, and was a hindrance to Vera. And as Jane had stated, there was an incident after our July meeting. I had been in charge of the tape recorders for the meetings. I started mine and the housing committee's tape recorder 52 seconds before the meeting started. And at the end of the meeting, when Karen turned that on, is when she went into her rage to Vera. And it was ugly. She was screaming. And there were 4 witnesses there. And it was absolutely unnecessary that behavior happened, because the tapes were done right and they were ready for our transcriber to transcribe, and slamming the door on her way out. And throughout this whole, I don't know, however long it took her to get her T's crossed and her I's dotted to get rid of Vera, but in that whole time, Vera worked in a pretty hostile environment. And the only reason I was given as a board member throughout this whole thing why they got rid of her was because she wasn't qualified. Well, in order for a director to be chosen to be the director, the state has to approve that. And if she wasn't qualified, they would not have approved her. And as James said, she's the best thing that ever happened. And the reason I wanted to get on this board was to be a big help to her. We all got appointed at the same time, and everything was going smoothly until this April or May. I don't know what started this process, but it's been real ugly. And the tenant association has gotten 80% signatures on a petition. They don't want her as our board chair. And I think that is their home, and I think that we need a lot calmer, more compassionate human being on the housing board. And so would like to ask this board to do the right thing tonight and please remove her from our board. It's very unpleasant for me being left out of, and I've complained to Jim, I say to him a lot, I'm not part of this board, so, you know, I just don't feel I'm part of the board because I was never told anything about Vera being fired until the time it happened, and then told she was not qualified. She's more than qualified, and she didn't get a job at one of the facilities because she was overqualified. So I hope that you will do the right thing tonight, and I thank you.
Shannon Sinico, Secretary of the Tenants Association.
Hi, I'm Shannon Sinico. I live at Flag Rock and I'm on the tenant association. And all I want to say is, I don't know what you think about everybody that lives up there. There are reasons people are there. And for me, it was a terrible divorce and a terrible accident. And I lost everything. And that's why I'm there. And the people up there really need someone who's compassionate. And when I started applying, we had a previous director who treated me terribly. I'm not stupid. I'm as smart as anybody in this room. And I let her have it. It was all recorded. She was horrible. Everybody needs to be humbled at some point in their life because in a split second, you can be where I was. And then I met Vera, and it was amazing. And I've known Karen forever, and I like Karen. But when it comes to being on a board like this, unless you are up there, all of you, and spend a week there and meet everybody up there, you don't know what it takes. And what it actually takes is someone who cares. There's elderly people. This is where they're gonna be until the day they die. And it needs to not be hostile. So I'm asking you to, whether you know or your friends or whatnot, just to really listen to the people that live there, because that's who it's affecting. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I forgot one thing. This one particular day, there was going to be a meeting. Karen was going to come in to see Vera, and she was visibly shaken. So I said to her, I'm the treasurer. It's about finance. I'll come in and sit in the meeting with you. When Karen got there, she bodily blocked the door so I could not come in. Told me it was a private meeting and I could not come in, and she slammed the door in my face. And after our August meeting, I met her out in the driveway and asked her a question. And she started yelling at me, and when I told her not to yell, she screamed so loud at me you could hear her on Cone Avenue, and that I walked away and said, there's no sense in me trying anything because this is the way it is. I forgot to tell you. So I've been bullied also.
The last witness is going to be Eileen Mooney.
On my count, Mr. Chair, that is four witnesses. I believe on my count, that is four witnesses.
Arlene, Jane, Jackie, and then Eileen. That would be four.
Shannon. Shannon.
Should be four. Arlene, you had four, including yourself.
Well, I didn't know it included myself. I apologize.
Susan Chair,
Yes.
when we read the instructions, it says, up to four witnesses on behalf of the Tenants Association. And then it says up to three witnesses, including Ms. Lubert. So I can understand why Ms. Kowalski did not understand that those four witnesses, including herself, when the procedure was so specific as to making clear to me that I get three witnesses, including myself. Ergo, I bring forward two witnesses. So I think there was some ambiguity on what was written, I think I cannot totally understand why Ms. Kowalski did not understand that she was part of the 4 witnesses.
We had said 4 because she was representing the association, so it's any 4 that she wanted.
Yeah, but you were quite specific saying that the 3 witnesses
It was
included
personal,
the,
not because you're personal.
and also,
Yes. No, go ahead.
I'm bringing forth 1 witness, and if, I don't know if that's allowed.
You're welcome to call if it's part of your complaint.
No,
Okay.
I do not say that.
Marlene, do you have anything else to add?
Yes, I do. Karen's been on the board a little over a year, and it's been so chaotic, so up and down. You never know what's going to happen when she comes. And I think for the elderly, they need protection. There is 2 complaints with all the protective service. I'm not privy, of course, as to what's going on with that. But, you know, these tenants shouldn't have to live this way. You know, I mean, some people, that's their last stop in life there. And the family units shouldn't have to get calls about writing them letters and stuff for here. It's, you know, she's micromanaging. This thing she's doing is overstepping so much. You know, it's not the Karen Smith housing, it's the Great Barrington housing where there's tenants that need to be listened to, they need to be helped. I'm not saying babysit or hold their hand. A little compassion goes a long way. You know, but I'm really hoping you guys will make the right decision. Any other board, you may be fine, but for some reason with the elderly, it's a nightmare for us up there. You know, and it's the screaming. It's like, we're not children. We're not in Head Start or the grade, you know, or in the scribble somewhere. We're adults. Some people up there have PTSD. There's all kinds of things. They don't need this in their lives. I don't need it in mine. And she's never yelled at me, but I've seen her in action, and it's a scary thing. And that's, you know, I'm just hoping you'll really think hard about this, because she's still doing it. It's not like it stopped. I mean, after I did the show, you know, history repeats itself. It's not right to have somebody like that there. That's not what a chairperson's supposed to be. She's supposed to be respectful. She's supposed to at least listen to somebody when they talk instead of cutting them off at the waist. It's not right. Please remove her from the board. That's all I'm asking.
The board members, do you have questions of any of the witnesses?
Jane, you said slam the door in tenant's face. I don't know, I think you said that. Was that right?
Slammed the door and this lady was just standing there. She never turned, she was on a walker. And she said she just slammed the door in my face. She's really in bad shape.
And then you talked about a phone call where she identified herself as the...
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, you talked about a phone call where she identified herself as the executive director? Marlene, I'm sorry.
Yes, I was told by somebody, she called the, what's it, Canadian, what is it?
So Marlene, let me ask you this. Did you witness that?
No, I didn't, but it can be verified with a phone call. It's in the legal department now. I'm just, you know, her character is what I'm saying. This is the character.
Just go up to the microphone.
I'm sorry. This is her character. You know, I mean, like I said, call payroll company. You know, talk to a lady named Debbie. Yeah, but, you know, that's all I'm saying. I don't care whether she did it or not. It's not my business. What is my business is the way she carries herself at the Great Barrington Housing Authority. And that's a legal thing with the payroll company. You know, but it shows her character. And the character, you know, with everything. You know, tell her Rich to thank her for the truck 100 times when the truck was ordered over a year ago before she got there. And then say, you're going to thank me, right? What do you got to say? Why? You know?
A couple for Jackie. So was Vera not fired in an open meeting? You said you heard about it. Had a decision been made?
The decision had been made, and then we finally had to have a meeting, and with the yay or nay, and I was the only one that went nay.
So the decision,
Yeah, I mean, this was all planned and decided, and then I'm like, why was she fired? And I was told that she wasn't qualified. And I think there's complaints on our open meeting and the things that went on that weren't done in the right way.
Is Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Janeski, is this still falling under, would this be falling under new evidence, these questions, or are they falling under what we're?
What I have to ask you to do is two things. One is to keep it to the scope of the complaint. Number two is you can't testify on something, and I'm not referring to you necessarily, that you didn't see. So if it's secondhand information, it may have happened. No, I'm not. Marlene had said something about her representing herself as the director of the association, but of the housing director. But you can't testify that if you didn't see it. I mean, it's hearsay. So that I would prefer to keep out. So I'm just trying to keep it to that. No, you didn't. You
But you also said an administrative assistant was hired. Was that not done by Vera? Who did the hiring? Who hired the administrative assistant after Michelle?
Karen sent her friend to Vera. Vera would not say, I don't want her, because she would have been, it wouldn't have gone over big. And you know the story of friends. You know what better than I do. But the
That's all.
qualifications.
Then, did you say that, Marlene, that there was calls to protective services?
Elder services, yes.
That's related to?
Well, there's two cases of it. One, yes, with the lady that she slammed the door in the face, yes. They're just having a problem talking to her.
Anyone else on the board? Not hearing anyone? Moving ahead. Karen or Rich?
Are we going to rebut the first case and then we'll have a rebuttal in the second case as well?
Okay, yes, I was gonna have you rebut, but no.
I think when you explained it earlier that we.
Yeah, that's right, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Good evening, my name is Michelle LeBaire. For the record, I am a former employee of the Great Barrington Housing Authority, a town finance committee member, as well as a member of the Berkshire Hills Regional School District Next Steps Committee. Also, I possess a master's degree in public administration. Unlike the town of Great Barrington and Ms. Smith, I am not represented by legal counsel this evening. On November 13, 2018, I filed a letter of complaint with Select Board Chair Stephen Bannon. This complaint regards the conduct and actions of Karen Smith, Chair of the Great Barrington Housing Authority, toward me after a GBHA meeting on October 30, 2018. Per the rules of this hearing, I am allowed to call 2 witnesses, other than myself. 2 eyewitnesses to the incident referred to in my complaint are members of the press, Kristen Palpini of the Berkshire Eagle and Joe Williams of the Berkshire Record. When I requested that they speak this evening, both declined, citing reporter's privilege. However, the incident has been reported by the press. Many in the audience are not familiar with the content of my complaint. For this purpose, I now would like to read my complaint, followed by a closing statement. After my closing statement, Ms. Sharon Gregory will speak on my behalf. This is my complaint. Dear Mr. Bannon, as an active and enthusiastic participant in local government, an MPA, and now as an elected official, writing this letter is very uncomfortable and difficult. However, an incident has occurred for which I cannot remain silent. Perhaps if this was an isolated incident, I could look the other way, but this is not the case. An incident that occurred at the Great Barrington Housing Authority on October 30th
was the last straw in a long pattern of disrespect and intimidation shown toward me by Karen Smith, Chair of the Great Barrington Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. Ms. Smith also serves on several other town boards and committees. I was employed by the Great Barrington Housing Authority from November 13, 2017 to May 4, 2018, at which time I resigned my position. A copy of my resignation letter is enclosed. My resignation letter explains the reasons for my resignation. What the resignation letter does not state is that as an employee of the GBHA, I was routinely subjected to discourtesy and disrespect by Ms. Smith. As an employee, I reported Chair Smith's actions to the Executive Director, another member of the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority, and several other members of our community that I trusted for guidance and support. On more than one occasion, I confided that, quote, Karen was making my life a living hell, close quote. As a matter of fact, I almost withdrew from the Finance Committee election race due to the stress I was experiencing at the GBHA offices. Ms. Smith created a tense, hostile, and oppressive workplace. Although I was no longer an employee at the GBHA, as a citizen, I did continue to attend some of the public meetings of the GBHA Board of Commissioners. On October 30th, I attended the GBHA Board of Commissioners meeting. Among those in attendance were many Housing Authority residents, press members, 2 members of the Great Barrington Select Board, and Department of Housing and Community Development Attorney Helen Boyle. During this meeting, Chair Smith announced that Tina Danzy was under consideration as the interim executive director of the GBHA. A public vote was taken, and Ms. Danzy was confirmed as the interim executive director. After the vote, I requested a copy of Ms. Danzy's resume, a public record. Copies were not available at the meeting, but board member James Mercer announced that after the meeting, he would make copies for anyone who wanted a copy. After the meeting adjourned, several people, including 2 members of the press, waited outside the GBHA administrative offices for a copy of Ms. Danzy's resume. Ms. Smith entered the hallway, went into the GBHA office, and spoke to Mr. Mercer. She then announced that copies of Ms. Danzy's resume would not be released since Ms. Danzy had not yet given notice to her current employer. I reminded Ms. Smith that Ms. Danzy's hiring had already been publicly announced, and therefore the resume was now public information. Ms. Smith became extremely angry, exited the office, and entered the hallway. With the press present, Ms. Smith moved toward me, forcing me up against the hallway wall. She came very close to my face and shouted that the reason the GBHA was in such a mess was because of my job performance. Because the press was present, I said, quote, "Be careful, Karen," close quote, at which time she became even angrier and stormed out of the building. I was shaken, upset, and offended by Ms. Smith's defamatory statements. I approached DHCD Attorney Boyle, who was still in the GBHA common room speaking with another board member, and said, "You need to get your chair in check, or you will have another lawyer knocking on the GBHA door." I was so shaken by Ms. Smith's aggressive and hostile behavior, I sat in my car to calm myself before driving. I even called my husband for comfort and support. Ms. Smith's conduct as an elected official is egregious. Ms. Smith has exhibited this conduct toward me as a citizen at public meetings, as an employee of the GBHA, and now as a fellow elected official. It is my opinion that Ms. Smith's comments are not only detrimental to my ability to secure new employment, but also damaging to my credibility as a Great Barrington Finance Committee member. Ms. Smith's negative and inappropriate behavior must end. I feel that if I say nothing, this behavior will only continue and harm others.
Steve, recently, my daughter, Victoria, informed me that she would like to pursue a career in government. She has recently returned to Boston from California and is now working there while applying to graduate school. Victoria said that while in California, she volunteered for political campaigns and worked for several causes and became inspired to pursue a career in the public sector, something that our government desperately needs, more young people in government. Obviously, as an MPA, I am excited by her decision. However, if I ever discovered that any official, elected official, or anyone else for that matter, treated my daughter with the same conduct with which Ms. Smith treated me, I would encourage Victoria to file a complaint against that person. And because I never instruct my daughter to do something I would not do myself, I am submitting this letter to you. I realize this is a delicate situation, but it must be addressed. I respectfully request the Great Barrington Select Board take whatever action within their authority on the egregious conduct of elected official Karen Smith, Chair of the Great Barrington Housing Authority. Thank you. In closing, Ms. Smith's public outburst in the presence of 2 reporters has already caused me considerable professional embarrassment and possible loss of employment opportunities. This, in turn, harms the financial well-being of my family. Her comment on October 30th regarding my professional competence is, at the least, untrue. At the worst, defamatory. I stress that Ms. Smith's bullying behavior is not just related to the Housing Authority. I've witnessed it many times over the years at CPA meetings, select board meetings, even at forums regarding the renovation of Monument Mountain Regional High School. I've been subject to it as an employee of the GBHA. There have been times when I've attended meetings and witnessed the uneasy laughter of board and audience members after Ms. Smith has made an unacceptable or inappropriate comment. It's as if this behavior is looked upon as business as usual when it comes to Ms. Smith. Well, I'm not laughing. There are people in this audience who support my complaint, but when I asked them to speak tonight, the words, quote, "I'm afraid," were stated over and over again. One small business owner said that Ms. Smith was always rude and disrespectful to her, yet she will not speak publicly. She is, quote, "afraid doing so will hurt her business." Another person will not speak publicly because Ms. Smith serves on so many boards. This person is afraid of what will happen politically if he speaks out. Another said, quote, "Karen hates me and I don't know why," close quote, yet will not speak publicly due to Ms. Smith's political connections as well as Ms. Smith being a town employee. Afraid. Is this the tone we want in our community? As a resident and elected official of this town, I certainly hope not. I ask the Select Board to please take appropriate action to ensure that Ms. Smith doesn't continue this disrespectful and harmful behavior. At this time, and with the Chair's permission, I would like to ask Ms. Gregory to speak. Thank you.
Jim, we're going to start your testimony.
Who's really participating with this any impact throughout the complaint?
Sir, did you witness what occurred?
She's a character
How
witness,
many character was?
and it was not disallowed.
Not sure what
And our
occurred.
corroboration of what Michelle said.
Well, you can't corroborate if you weren't there. Because the complaint is specifically,
Let me say I'm a character.
Mr. Chair, the character of the complainants, I don't believe is an issue here.
I
rather
do
than
believe it
subject
is
to
of
the
issue
complaint.
because my professionalism was, this is the whole point, what was stated was defamatory with regard to my professionalism, my competence. To say that it was because of me that GBHA was in such a mess, this, a character witness as to my credibility, as to my professionalism is of importance here. and I strongly urge it be allowed.
Mr. Chair, in my view, the element of the complaint is the assertion that an improper comment was made regarding a person's performance. This board is not here to decide on whether someone's performance was good or bad, or whether there was defamation. That would be a separate and private or civil matter. If there's a witness who can speak to any of the elements of the complaint, some are specific, some are general, that's permissible. But in my view, this is not a question of character of the complainant, it's a question of the substance of the complaints themselves. And the issue of whether a person was competent, was not competent, was defamed, is not something that this board can decide in the absence of authority and power that it does not have. That would be a legal action of someone else.
And Chair, I bring before you that the two eyewitnesses have invoked reporter's privilege. This leaves me vulnerable. I cannot ask them to, their editors have said reporter's privilege. Whether that can be challenged or not, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, and unfortunately, I don't have the funds to pay for a lawyer here tonight. So I feel Ms. Gregory's testimony is relevant.
I'm going to uphold what town council has recommended, so we have them here, and if that's going to be challenged at some other point, his recommendation.
Very hard to hear you.
Okay, sorry.
This is not just about professional competence, it's about abusive behavior against Michelle LeBear.
Right, but it was one incident that you didn't witness, so.
But it is not just the one incident. She's had her complaint carries through with her letter about continued abusive behavior against her, which forced her to resign. And that is part of the complaint. It's not just, did he say or did he not say these couple of things about professional competence. I really beg you to consider the whole of what her complaint is.
Well, we are considering that, but you didn't witness any of that, so that's not part of what you would have to be a witness to.
And just for the record, I just want to exert a protest.
That's fine. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well,
Do you have anyone else, Michelle?
I do
will
not.
release this to the press.
That's fine, you may. Questions by the board?
Will we have time to discuss all of this?
Yes.
After everybody, okay.
Yes.
Do you have a question? I'm
No,
sorry.
I don't think you did.
Oh,
No question.
sorry.
I have one. You talked about,
Excuse me.
yeah. In the incident, you said she forced you up against the wall.
Yes.
Do you want to explain that? Or
Well, if you have been in the hallway, you were one of the select board members at the meeting, along with Mr. Cook. I was standing, Kristen Palpini was on one side, Joe Williams was on another. There's a half door that leads into the administrative offices. Ms. Smith stormed out of the door. I was over against the wall. I was standing like this, and with her presence, she backed me up against the wall. Any more questions? Oh, I'm sorry, that's your line.
That's okay. Anyone?